Cheers, everybody. Welcome back to Good Bets, Good Times. This is the football betting show built for all my recreational degens, my weekend warriors who want to win a little bit more, lose a little bit less, and have a good damn time doing it. I am your host, Nate Tuttle of NT Sports, and got a fun one today. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. It's that time of the year where, before we really get into the meat of our preseason preview episodes leading up to college football, leading up to NFL, I like to drop a little educational episode of every now and then. Maybe share a few things that I've learned over the years. Maybe you can learn a little something that'll help you this upcoming football season, a little wisdom to guide you along your sports betting journey. So today I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to look deep inside yourself and answer it honestly. This is an episode of self-awareness, all right? So, what kind of sports bettor are you? What type of sports bettor are you? Not what you want to be, not what you think you are, not what you tell your buddies in the group chat, but what kind of bettor are you actually? Let's say it's Sunday night football. Game's going to start here in a little bit. You grab a few beers. Are you scrolling through FanDuel, trying to find a fun little SGP to put in, just to add a little extra entertainment on the game, maybe win a few bucks? Nothing wrong with that. Or you have your odds screen up. You're trying to look for some value across the market. Or maybe you're already on to the next week. Maybe you're running your models, getting ready to pounce on some opening lines for the following football weekend. That's great too. So I've been doing this show for over a year now. Been betting on sports for almost a decade, unless you want to count back when I was a kid, helping my dad fill out parlay cards going into the football weekend. But here's what I believe. One of the biggest reasons that people struggle with sports betting or struggle losing money with sports betting, it's because they have no idea what kind of sports bettor they actually are. You think you're disciplined when you're not. Think you're sharp when you're square. And the one thing that I want to spend the most time on today is that if you go on social media, if you listen to other podcasts, you think you should be climbing this imaginary ladder to ultimately become some sort of massive, rich, professional sports bettor. And really, that's for the very select few people in the world. So we're laying it all out today. The three main types of sports bettors. A couple other sideways tiers we'll get into as well. But no matter where you land, we're also going to throw in a few tips. So no matter what tier you're in, you can leave this episode maybe betting a little bit smarter going forward. It's not about climbing some imaginary ladder. It's about knowing where you are, being honest about it, and then just being the best version of yourself within that tier. If you want to climb, cool. If you want to just be the weekend warrior and stay where you are, awesome. Either way, let's get into it. So, 3 rules before I get this started. Rule 1, as I mentioned, there's no right tier. I'm going to keep saying that because most of the noise in this space is going to tell you like you feel like you're not doing good enough. The touts, the pro bettor cosplayers on Twitter, they're going to feel like if you're not grinding out 3-4% ROI every weekend, and you're failing. And it's not true. The weekend warrior who's having fun on the weekends, perfectly valid. The hobbyist who maybe breaks even, wins a little bit of money, but just enjoys the puzzle, the art and the science that is sports betting, even though they have no aspirations of becoming a professional and relying on their income coming from sports betting. So whatever tier that you're in, that's the right tier for you. Tier 2 or rule 2, just be honest with yourself. Have some self-awareness, have an honest assessment about where you really are and where you want to be. And rule 3, every tier we're going to go through, as I mentioned, actionable steps. So there's always things in each tier that you can do to make yourself better. Whether you want to continue being the weekend warrior just like the vast majority of people, which is totally cool, or you want to make this a very serious hobby, or maybe you do want to bet professionally someday and you want to go down that road, which we'll get into that here in a second. So, and one thing to point out too, if you find this information useful, this breakdown's useful, if you learned a little something today, go ahead and hit follow on the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. And then you won't miss out on any new episodes as they drop throughout the summer. So let's kick it off. Starting in the top, tier 1. Obviously, we have the weekend warrior. A tier that I was in for a very long time. A tier that occasionally I'll fall back into, depending on what season it is. Summertime, I'm not an NBA bettor. I'm not an NHL bettor. I don't bet on baseball very often, but every now and then, NBA playoffs are here. I might throw in a bet on a weekend. Why not? Right? It's fun. Makes the games more interesting. Games that I otherwise would not really find too compelling. But if this is you, you probably already know. But let me paint the picture here. So you probably have one of the more popular sports betting apps in your phone, maybe 2. You're going to mostly bet on the games that you're going to watch. Thursday night football, primetime college football, maybe throw in a few parlays here and there. Sunday night football, Monday night football. You just like having some actions on the games. It makes the season more fun. You know, probably throwing out some parlays in the group chat with the buddies. Saturday morning tradition. Who's everybody on? Who we parlaying up? Let's have a good time this Saturday, right? You're not trying to outsmart Vegas. You're trying to enjoy the games. And that's awesome. Like, that's a totally legitimate way to take on sports betting. I think that's, if you ask the sports books, it's probably what they would say their intention is for their sports betting products, their entertainment products. They want you to have fun. And the Weekend Warrior is probably the biggest group of sports bettors. Well, actually is the biggest group of sports bettors out there. And if you're listening to this, most likely you fall into that category. And yeah, as long as you're having fun and you're not betting that any money you can't afford, you're not chasing, you're not getting yourself into trouble, then cool. Do you, man. But even if you are a weekend warrior, there's still some things you want to keep in mind, right? First thing is, obviously, budget yourself, right? Don't get yourself into trouble. Set a bankroll. This is entertainment money. This is fun money. But go into the season and actually give yourself a budget for the year and how much money that you want to spend throughout the season, which will be your bankroll. And then every bet you make, 1 to 3% of that, maybe 3% if it's just a straight bet on a spread or a total or a prop bet. If you're looking to do some fun parlays, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 0.5%, knowing those are big money payouts. But if you do that, you're going to be able to play the entire season. You might come up on top, you might lose, but that money is going to last you every weekend of the season throughout the football season, throughout the Super Bowl. All right, when you're done, you're done. That's it. And then open more than one sports book. We'll talk about this more in a second, and I will harp on it in every episode. I talked about it last week. You don't need to have 10, 12, 15 sports books. Just have 3 to 5 of the most popular ones. Take advantage of every promotion that you can get. There's free money out there all the time the sports books are giving away, especially if you are a true weekend warrior and you're just having fun. They're going to give you promos. They're going to give you boosts. They're going to give you money. So please, by all means, take advantage. And it helps the shop too. I mean, you don't have to spend too much time. You're probably not going to want to spend too much time shopping around on different sports books, but at least have a couple to look at to see where you can find the best numbers and the best odds. And the last one, don't chase. Stick to your unit size. Don't lose 3 or 4 bets early on a Sunday and go put a bet that is 20% of your bankroll on the Sunday Night Football game to try to get caught up. That's called chasing. That's a problem. That's going to dig yourself a hole. That's going to lead you down a road you do not want to go down. Last piece of it, if you're on tier 1 and you're finding yourself that, you're thinking maybe you want to take this a little more seriously, to kind of progress into tier 2, which we'll talk about here in a second, a couple of things you can do to get started. 1, be more disciplined with your bets and start tracking. And learn how to say no when the price isn't right. Sometimes being able to pass on a bet is a sign that maybe you're ready to step up a little bit. Maybe you do want to take this a little more seriously. And I said track all your bets. Use the Action app, use Picket, use BetStamp, whatever you want. Track your bets, understand where you're winning, where you're losing, track your closing line value, track your ROI, just to get a feel for it. All right? And that leads us to tier 2. My personal preference, the Sharp, the Recreational Sharp, the serious hobbyist. My favorite analogy is golf, right? So there's a lot of us who want to grab a 6-pack, hit 18 with the buddies. All good. Then there's some who take it a little more seriously. They're going to go out. They're going to smoke you on the golf course. No gimmies. They're going to track every stroke. Those are the serious amateurs, right? Then, of course, you have your professionals making money from being a good golfer. Same thing as sports betting. You have your weekend warriors, and then the middle tier here is the Recreational Sharp. It's a hobby that it's slightly more than a hobby. You have no aspirations to rely on winning at sports betting to provide a steady income. You don't want to have to support your family with your winnings from your sports bets, which especially with some new tax laws that are out there could get very, very complicated. But you want to bet like a sharp. You want to win. You're constantly learning. Maybe you're dabbling in building your own models. Maybe more of a top-down bettor, and you just have a nice odd screen where you're constantly looking for positive EV bets across the board. You're tracking all your bets, tracking your ROI, tracking your CLV. You know when to pass on bets. You know when numbers aren't good. You have that discipline. You still might throw some fun bets out there every now and then. I know I do. Thanksgiving, that's my day. All rules are out the window on Thanksgiving. Outside of bet responsibly, stay within your budget. But we're talking parlays. I'll pass the leg with the buddies. Why not? It's a holiday. Have some fun. But for the most part, 99% of the time, I'm looking to make good bets. And one very important point, and you need to be honest with yourself, because I've been there, and there's a lot of people who think that they're in tier 2 when they're really in tier 1. Maybe they have a tracker app, maybe they have an odd screen, but there's a couple things that you can do to kind of prove out that, yeah, you're solely in tier 2. You're a sharp bettor. You're a serious hobbyist. One of the biggest things you can do is just track your CLV, track your closing line value. Just make sure you're getting better numbers across the board than where that line is closing at, right? Are you beating the closing line on a consistent basis? That's not the end all be all, but it's one thing that can really give you a good idea if you're making good bets and you're on the right track. And obviously, are you winning more often than you're losing? Do you have an ROI, right? It's one thing to be able to scale that, to make really good money from it. And we'll get into all the pitfalls and things that you're going to run into here in a second. Also, a few things you can keep in mind too as you are either aiming for tier 2, you're in tier 2, or you think you're in tier 2. And the first one is what I'm always going to be talking about every episode when I talk about the bets I make, when I'm trying to give tips to people on how they can make more money in sports betting and just win a little bit more than they lose. And that is line shopping. Get yourself an odds screen. You don't have to pay for one of the crazy expensive ones. There's affordable ones out there. Even some free ones who, you know, may not be super real time, but it's going to give you a good enough look into where the lines are across all your sports books. And we know the difference that price makes. And sharp bettors bet based on price. That's what separates you from the weekend warrior, is that every bet you make, you're betting based on, is the price worth the bet? And price translates into the probabilities, right? So minus 110 bet, you got to win 53% of the time, rounding up. If you find a bet, the same bet at plus 100, minus 105, it's even better. In the long run, that's gonna how you're gonna build up profits across all of your bets. So download as many sports books as you have access to. I mean, I probably have well over a dozen at this point that I'm constantly looking at. Every bet I make, I go and check my odds screen, then I double check within the books before I place the bet to make sure that's the line that I want to take. This is the price. And number two, as we just mentioned, it's not always about wins and losses. You can't just track your winning percentage and think that you are going to be a profitable sports bettor, especially short term. It takes years of making bets, years of seeing positive CLV, years of seeing ROI before you can consider yourself in this Rec Sharp tier. Short-term runs are fine. You may win for 2 or 3 months and be like, shit, I got this. I had maybe even a season. Maybe you have one good season. You're like, oh, man, I could do this for real. But there's a thing called variance in sports betting. You can win a lot of bad bets. You can lose a lot of good bets. It goes back to, are your bets beating the market? If they are, then you're on the right track. Keep pushing. Because eventually the variance will fall into your favor over the long term. Over 3, 5, 10 years of doing this, those little edges will add up. That ROI will add up. Number 3, my recommendation is always to specialize. And you can get very specific in the markets that you want to specialize in. For me, it's football. And mostly the reason for that is I'm assuming, yeah, sure, maybe I could go in and find a niche market in WNBA or something, or golf or tennis and do really well. But I love football. That's my thing. Is NFL the hardest market to bet into? The most efficient market to bet into? It is. College football is very difficult too, even though it's a little easier with so many teams, especially if you start getting deep into the G5. And if you're a sicko, FCS. But it's what I love, and it's what I focus on. It is difficult, but I'm a NFL and college football spread money line bettor. That's my lane. I'm not trying to find, these niche markets, these inefficient markets, which is really the way that if you really want to make good money, if you want to take that step to a pro, it's probably where you want to go. But still, pick a sport. Pick a sport, pick a bet type, pick a market that you want to invest in, and get really good at it. And once you prove out you're good at it, a lot of that's going to translate to other markets you can bet into. So specialize when you can. Pick your lane. If you're in the Rec Sharp bucket and that's where you want to be, like I said, The biggest difference between being a recreational sharp and a pro bettor is whether or not you want your income to be reliant on sports betting. That's what it comes down to. The jump into tier 3 is a whole new ball game. It's not just, are you more disciplined? Are you getting CLV? It's, do you want to change your lifestyle? That's what it comes down to. And tier 3 is the aspiring pro. If you're in this tier, or you think you're going to be in this tier, or you want to be in this tier, it means you want to make real, tangible money sports betting, either as a legitimate side income or maybe even full time. Maybe quit your day job territory. You're disciplined, you're data driven, you're putting in the hours. You're either building your own models and originating, or you have an odd screen up 24/7. You're constantly looking at lines. You're probably specialized in a certain market or a couple different markets, depending on how experienced you are. And you take it very seriously. Obviously, you have to. It's a job, right? And respect that. Like, if that's you, that's awesome. If you're making money from this, that's great. But to be honest, most people who think they want to be in this tier don't really understand, for one, what it takes or what it actually costs. And I'm not talking about what it costs in terms of money, but like in lifestyle and the emotional energy. It's not just a more intense version of the recreational sharp. It's a completely different ballgame. It's like being that, going back to the golf analogy, it's like being that very serious amateur who plays golf a couple times a week, smokes everybody on the course, and then they go try to compete in the Masters the following weekend, right? It's a different ballgame. And it's also most likely going to take the joy out of sports. You might not even want to watch the games. You're just making the bets, you're moving on. Making the bets, moving on. Go back to your odds screen, running your models. It legitimately is a job. And then the money aspect, I mean, think about if you want to make an income off of this. I mean, you're talking at least starting out with a 6-figure, probably mid 6-figure bankroll. And that's if you actually want to make a very good side. Could you live off of it? Maybe, depending on your lifestyle. But it's serious. And here comes the part that maybe not a lot of you realize. If you've won consistently, you've probably experienced this if you're betting decent amount of money. And that's as soon as you become a winner on the vast majority of sports books, they're going to flag you as a winner, as a sharp sports bettor. And they're going to start throttling back your bets. They're going to limit you down very quickly. And then, even if you do have an edge and you have a bankroll, the challenge is actually finding ways to get that money down. And you can research some ways of professional sports bettors do this. You can form a large syndicate. You can find other people's accounts to bet into, offshore books, move to Vegas and bet at some of the books who are market making books who take money from anybody. But it's a whole nother puzzle and challenge that you have to solve, just getting your money down to make it worth being a professional sports bettor. So, and I'm not saying this to discourage anybody. Honestly, if I was quite a few years younger, if I was back in maybe my mid-20s and I didn't have any responsibilities, this could be a path potentially I could see myself taking. It's a lot different back then, before sports betting was legal across the vast majority of states and more accessible. So if you have those aspirations and you have the time and you want to live that lifestyle, you can afford to make that lifestyle, go for it, man. And if you do want to do this, some tips to get you started, and similar to the Rec Sharp tips. One, you got to prove out that you can win at scale. It's not a short-term run. Probably not even going to want to base this off of one season or 1 year of data. You're probably going to want at least 3 to 5 thousands of bets. You're tracking your CLV. You have a verifiable edge in the market, and you can confidently scale that edge. Number 2, as I mentioned, try to specialize. Try to find betting markets that are much less inefficient, where it may be a little more easier to find an edge. You're probably not going to want to start out betting NFL sides as if you're trying to bounce into pro betting right away. Might be able to get there over time, but specialize. Pick one market, pick one sport, go hard at it. Number 3, you got to treat it like a job. Just think about a corporate job. You got to work your hours. You got to review your process constantly. You got to work on your model. You got to measure everything, track everything, and it's going to be a grind. So if you want it to be a job, you got to treat it like a job. And yeah, and after you listen to all this, if you're like, hey, yeah, that sounds awesome, I want to do it, go for it. I'm rooting for you. And side note, if you're not following us on any of the social media, especially X, in between episodes and all throughout the summer, as we get into previews and I start making some futures bets, and then during the season, in between episodes, everything is going to be posted on X. Follow us along at NT Sports 22. Love getting into the conversation. Tell me what you're thinking, and definitely appreciate the support. Last but not least, the sideways tiers, as I call them. So I got three more quick tiers we'll run through, and maybe this is you, and I'm not going to judge, first of all, but the first one is the pick buyer. So you're paying somebody on Twitter or Telegram or one of the other websites, paying $50 a month for some picks, or paying for a VIP package, or a big one-time payment for the lock of the year, whatever you want to do. And I want to be honest about this because I don't want to oversimplify. But the truth is, there are a small number of legitimate, sharp pick or information sellers out there. And could be for a number of reasons. I know one of the biggest pushbacks that you'll hear around why do people sell picks, maybe it's people, as we talked about in the aspiring pro category, maybe it's someone with a true edge who just doesn't want to have to worry about the bullshit that goes around trying to figure out where to get their money down. Maybe they got limited at the books. They have an edge. They want to make a little money off of it. So you sell the subscription to other folks. You share that information. They're running off real data, real analytic services. And you can find these folks out there if this is the path you want to go down. But be smart about it. Do your research. Make sure they have verifiable trend of winning. And they're not just a con artist. But here's the problem for most folks trying to buy picks. Even if the person they're a sharp bettor and they're releasing picks, if they're really good, they probably have hundreds of subscribers. And as soon as that bettor is releasing that pick, that line's going to move. So unless you are on it and you're able to actually get into your sports book and get that money down before the market adjusts, the edge is going to be gone, and you're probably going to have to put that bet in at a worse price, which, as we know, over the long term, that's not going to work out for you. It's not going to be worth your subscription fees. And then the really good sharp services are probably going to be really expensive. Most normal people aren't going to want to pay that extra money. That's going to really cut into your profits as a sports bettor. You're better off taking that money, using it for other informational resources that can make you a better sports bettor. Even buy a nice odds screen with that money, or a Pay for a premium tracking app. Buy some books. I don't know. Do something than trying to spend hundreds of dollars trying to buy people's picks. For one, it doesn't seem fun. I don't know. Maybe that's your thing, but like I like the challenge of sports betting. I like being proud that, I picked some winners. I made a little profit over the weekend. I didn't rely on someone else's picks, and I'm just putting in the bets. So I'm not going to tell you there's nobody that's good at selling picks or has an edge, or it's not going to be worth your time. But just do your due diligence. Be smart about it. Sideways tier number 2. This is the degenerate, the real degen. And I'm not judging here. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. This is the person that bets on everything. They're going to be betting on Korean baseball at 4 a.m, Russian table tennis, random European soccer leagues. They just want the action. They just love the thrill of getting bets down. And this isn't a problem. It can be a problem, as we'll talk about here in a second. But for some, it's not a problem. You just want to have fun. You're like the weekend warrior, except you maybe take it a step further. You're a warrior every single day. And as long as you're being responsible with your money and you have the budget and the means to bet on whatever you want and just have a good time, by all means, man, do your thing. And that leads me into the last tier. And this is one where it is serious. I'm not going to make any jokes about it. Also, I'm not going to judge. But there becomes a point when sports betting stops being fun and starts being a problem. And this is typically the first sign is, we talked about the weekend warrior. You're chasing your losses. You're getting into the degen territory, but taking it a step further where you're betting money you can't afford. You're trying to win it all back on one big bet. You're lying to the people closest to you about how much money you're actually betting. And you think it's because you want to have fun, you like the thrill, but deep down, it's a serious problem. And look, no judgment, no lecture. And if this sounds familiar, there's resources. Just want to throw that out there. 1-800-GAMBLER. It's free. It's confidential. It's available 24/7 in every legal sports betting state. And you can self-exclude yourself from any major sports book very quickly. So all I'm going to say about that, moving on. Last but not least, before we wrap up, there are 5 simple principles that I believe apply to every tier. So if you forget everything else that we talked about today, please remember these 5 things that I'm going to repeat and probably talk about a lot throughout the season as we're making our own bets and as I'm talking about my own process. 1, know your bankroll, know your budget, stick to it, and be disciplined with the money that you're putting in. 2, as we talked about, line chop, have multiple sports books. Look for the best number. It's the highest value thing you can do in sports betting. 3, don't chase your losses. It's going to kill you. It's going to put you into a hole that you don't want to be in, and it's very hard to get out of. 4, track everything. Track ROI, track wins and losses, track CLV. And 5, only bet what you can afford to lose. All right, simple as that. If losing a bet is going to ruin your week and make it difficult for you to afford the things you need to afford to live your life, that's a problem. So keep these things in mind. Apply these rules to your life, whether you're the weekend warrior, you're just having a good time, scrolling through, placing bets on a Sunday night, or whether you're grinding and you actually want to make serious money off this. Be realistic, self-assess where you are. Have the self-awareness to understand what tier you fall into and what tier that you truly can make it into. Overall, be smart and have a good time. So that's it, folks. That's it for this week. If you got something out of this, as I mentioned, do me a favor. As we talked about, follow the show and shoot me a message on X or drop a comment. in whatever platform you're listening to, NT Sports 22. I'm just curious about the listeners of this show, what bucket you fall into. What tier are you in realistically, and what tier do you want to make it into? So let me know. I want to hear it. I want to have that conversation. And tune back in next week where we're going to get into some NFL win totals. So I've been working on some projections over the past few weeks, and going to have quite a few leans. And ideally by then, I will have fired on a couple of my early bets for the NFL season. So back into the football content. That's the episode for this week. So until next time, everybody, bet smart, have fun, and as always, cheers.